What's up, everybody? We're here for another episode of Dane's Platform, and I'm here to knock out Wil Fleming with his argument on velocity-based training. What's up, Wil?
Is it a holy grail or is it a hoax?
Oh, shit, that was so funny. So for those of you who might not know, is that Wil is a adamant user of velocity-based training, and my whole goal that I did a video on sort of opposing velocity-based training, not necessarily opposing it, but at least pointing out a couple different flaws. They've referenced it as though it's a holy grail that's going to get you to hit those big PRs. You've got to do velocity-based training. Otherwise, you're never going to increase your total on the platform. And Wil and I have known each other for a while. We threw in the Big Ten together. We've known each other, I guess, since 2004, 2003, something along those lines. Not as well as we've sort of gotten to know each other over the last 5 to 10 years. But so while I knew that he was engaging with velocity-based training for quite a while now, I believe 3 to 4 years, where he's been playing around with it. And I still remember you had told me you got that Tendo unit, and I was jealous that you got it. So I have to.
Yeah, right? I got like a secondhand Tendo unit.
Yeah. But so my goal was that I wanted to put out my stance on velocity-based training, and I wanted to see what Wil had to offer back to tell me I was a dumbass. And and basically now what we want to do is because he sent out his rebuttal video, and I had a blog/video that I had made on YouTube. So if you want to check those out, you can go check out those velocity-based training blogs or videos. They'll be down in the description. And then Wil and I will continue our discussion today, and maybe we can come to a general consensus, Wil.
Potentially, right? I think we will. You know, I mean, I don't think you're an idiot, right? So you'll figure it out.
So I guess my question becomes, do you want me to defend against?
Well, why don't we start on velocity-based training, right? Like basically,
okay, so,
it is a method of training, right? Yep. Where we're going to track the speed of the barbell, right? If I talk about weightlifting or performance, right? We can track the speed of the barbell, and that's an indicator of any number of things, right? You could use it as one of your primary variables in training, right? Mm-hmm. You could use it as an indicator to the athlete's fitness that day. And there's some advantages to that are kind of inherent. One of the big things about velocity-based training is that if we take a squat or a clean, and we take if you say you're going to go to 80% that day, we all know that 80% can feel a lot different on a given day, right? And there's a cool paper that I sent over to you where it's like, there can be an 18% on either side swing on how that actually feels, right?
I do think so. I wanted to clarify with that.
Yeah,
I think based off of how he got to that number, I don't necessarily believe 18% can be like really nailed down. But I also wanted it to be clear, like, my whole argument is I don't think percentage-based training is really worth anything outside of me telling you like, hey, hit 80%. You know, if we looked at our maxes, we could use that 80% range as a general guideline, but I don't think it's effective otherwise.
Right. And I think that what I go after typically in training, I've always written rep maxes or a heavy this or a light this or a moderate this, and it's more of a feel. But for some athletes, you tell me, like, heavy to them means they'll beat their head into like the wall to make something. Yeah. Whereas some people are just cool, like they hit like 90-ish%. They're like, I'm cool. That was pretty heavy, right? Yeah. So, velocity-based training is going to give us little things. So if we go back to that percentage thing, we got that huge swing, and we've all experienced that. You put something on your back, one day it feels great, one day it doesn't feel good, right? But velocity is like really true. So if you go like test all your velocities all the way to a max, if you have like an 80% number, right? This is how fast you move at 80%. Even if your max doubles at 80%, you'll still move at the same speed, right? So that like kind of shifts up the whole time. So it's kind of I say it's like a really true number. So that basically, velocity-based training is using the speed of the barbell as one of the variables in training.
Right. Yeah. And I think for me, and to clarify my position is, I do think it can pull away from coaching feedback. And I'm not saying that it has to, and it always would, but I think oftentimes kids or developmental athletes will value, and that, so it could be kids, but also developmental if somebody's just getting into weightlifting, where it's more about that number than what are their knees doing off the floor, what's their back doing, what's their chest position, what's their hand position, if we're talking about weightlifting specifically.
Yeah.
And I think that's my first issue with it, is that, and I told Will this when we were not recording, is that my overarching problem with it is that I see guys, not necessarily you, Will, because you're trying to educate people on what's going on. I believe this. I believe that, and you're going to come out with a book, and we'll revisit this. I'm going to read it. I'm going to give you a review, and I'm going to tell everybody how good it is, because I know from talking with you, you're putting in that effort.
Yeah.
My general problem has been, I struggled to start my business. Gyms are not financially successful. I grinded for 4 years in my parents' garage. I grinded for 4 years in my sister's barn. And I was fortunate enough that I made some decent business decisions along the way. And I never really bought something that I thought, like, gym owners are always like, what's that next big thing?
Let me get this thing. Yeah.
If I buy this, it's going to get me somebody to snatch this, or somebody's going to go to the NFL. And my overarching problem is, like, that stuff doesn't work unless you really know how to use it. And that's where I think you do come into play. So I think that was I was getting frustrated seeing the push towards it. And then, not to use Push, because that's
yeah. That is a brand. Yeah. Not sponsored by Push or any other.
Yeah. Maybe after this podcast, we will be.
Yeah. We'll talk to Rep 1.
Yeah. So I think that was sort of like my initial uneasiness around it. It was mainly going back to that coaching feedback and the technical precision. And then ultimately what I wanted to bring up was, well, there's two things, is that sometimes I use slow movements to ingrain technical positions. And the other aspect was, if I'm in a comp setting, and if I'm an Olympic weightlifter, I want everything to be almost exactly how it is in training when I'm in comp preparation. And so if I have somebody telling me in training, like, okay, this is where that speed was in training, I either want to know where that is in comp, or we shouldn't use it at all. And part of me was even like, I actually think if you're going to use it, I think you should use it in competition. Well, that's good, because I think it could essentially predict your attempts and your success rate.
Okay, there's a ton. I'm going to work backwards what you just said. So
go mad at me.
No. Dude, you make a bunch of good points, right? Like, one of my least I'm going to jump to kind of your middle point. I hate data collectors, right? Yep. Like, we're collecting data. Well, what are you doing with the data, right? Yeah,
so they don't know, like, shit. They don't know.
Don't collect your data and then leave it, right? So if you're going to go buy something, you need to do something with it and make an actionable impact on your athletes, right? And I'll talk about that even more, right? It's like, I had a Tendo. I was just screwing around with it. I bought a push band. I had a Tendo. Bought I had a bar sensei. I've had everything to like track this, just to check. And I've been doing it myself to try and just get an idea of like how to implement it, right? And it took me 2.5, 3 years to go, okay, this is a way to use it in a system that would make sense. And here's who should use it and who shouldn't and all that kind of stuff, right? So what I do want to do, like you said, I'm working on a book, is kind of take that guesswork out. So you can say, all right, you're going to use it this way. And this would be effective for you. And this is the simplest way to use it. And then you can go a little deeper and do it this way and all that kind of stuff. Okay, going to your final point, I do want to. I asked a Cat 1 IWF referee, like, can I use it? And they said, yeah, you could use that in the back room. You could hook it up. Like, you couldn't take it to the comp platform, but just like a phone in the back, you can use it. And I've heard from a handful of people that the German team has an app that is very accurate, and they will pick attempts or pick warm-ups or openers based on what they're seeing on their velocity in the back room, right? Yeah. So I've heard that. So I think that is an application that we can do. And my plan is to do that for the next meet that I compete in, whenever that is, right? Like, let's take it out. Yeah. And so it'll be like in the kind of when my book gets completed, that'll be like to be reviewed later, right? That might be a second edition thing, but here's what it would look like if you're going to take it to a meet. So yes, I do think that you need to, like, for weightlifting, if you're going to go for it, I think that's probably a good idea. Let's go for it, right? Going back, you made a couple points. You said that, like, developmental kids and all that kind of stuff. I wouldn't use it for somebody. I mean, this is where, like, a coach kind of comes into play, right? Like a kid who's not like a national level kid, right? Like, if you don't have a movement pattern that looks pretty solid and is like consistent, and yeah, it's consistent in particular, right? Like, if you throw your head back this time, you're jumping forward this time, you're doing this, right? If you're all over the place, don't do that, right? You need to work on technique. But if you have a pretty good model, I think you can use it to a great effect for those kids, right? So the people I have using it right now are like junior national, and I have a bunch of junior and university national kind of age kids, right? 20 to 24. So they're all like, they've qualified for those nationals. They've gone a couple times. We're just trying to use it to see if we can pick the right stimulus, right? And that's really what I'm trying to do with that, is like, what's the right stimulus for those kids in their snatch, clean and jerk, squats, right? Maybe some pulls even, but that is what we're trying to do. And I would never, ever want to replace coaching feedback, right? So
I don't think that you do. I don't think you even say that. I just think it can.
It could.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I would always tell people, like, hey, this isn't the coach. This is another coach, right? Yeah. So if you have an assistant that you as the coach can override every time, like, if you had an assistant coach, let's say DJ tells Jake to do something, but you don't agree with it, you would say, DJ, don't listen to DJ, listen to Dane, right? Like, this is what I'd say. So the VBT unit that could give you some feedback and say, well, go up because you're above the threshold you want to be at that day. But Dane says, don't go up. That kind of sucked, right? Like, you did this wrong, you were off balance, you were this. So it's just like another coach, but it's like, because no matter what our coaching eye says, it is impossible to tell the difference between a snatch that goes 2.25 meters per second and one that goes 2.1, right? It looks the same, so, but a snatch that for a tall kid, like 2.25, they can make that again, 2.1 meters per second. That might be getting it on their max threshold. So that is a good piece of information for me to have. I might say that looked really good, but I don't want you to truly, truly max today. We'll sit here for the rest of the day. So I think that it's another piece of feedback. But you're right. Coaches, gym owners, they want something to automate like how they do stuff or make them stand out.
Yeah, and all that kind of magic bullet too.
Yeah, right. I mean, I bought when I opened my gym, I bought you see this all the time. Somebody opens a gym and they could be a great coach, but their marketing is all about their equipment they have, right? I saw, a guy like, we got a mono lift, we got a belt squat machine, and we got the best lat pull down, and we got great squat racks. And it's like, dude, none of those things do a thing, right? And you see that, we do all velocity based training, and we do this, and we have a speed program. Well, you still haven't told me anything about what you do. You tell me about what you have, but not what you do. So that's the thing that coaches need to understand, right? It's like, what do you do with all that stuff? You can get strong. There are people right now squatting out of 2x4s in cement bucket, right? And they're getting getting strong. They're not squatting out of like $5,000 racks with ingrained LPT units, right?
I think and I think that dude, that plays to me, that plays to my heartstrings, only because that's how I built my brand. Like, I built everything that I've done at my gym is been a Craigslist find or an eBay find, and it's like I've gotten athletes from 6th grade to senior teams in weightlifting with bumper plates splitting in half. And it's like, that's where I think that was part of my issue initially, was like, dude, there's so many coaches that are going to buy this that they really need to learn other things first.
Yeah.
So it's sort of like,
I agree.
And I think,
honestly, and I hadn't even been taught, like I had like post something about working on this or whatever, and I just sprinkle it in there.
Yeah.
And the only reason I started posting about it quite a bit is I started working on my book. It's been cheap enough that like I bought a bunch, right? Like, so, for the longest time you could buy a Tendo for $1,500. You could buy a Gym Aware for $2,200, right? And then if we're actually talking about it, the accelerometer based ones that you can wear on your arm or put on the bar, they are horribly inaccurate, right? Like you couldn't, they're going to give you the wrong readings, and every 3rd or 4th rep, you're going to be like, I snatched what, right? Or I did it. Like, so it's just like, it's making your data look kind of bad, right? If you're using it in a performance setting, that might be okay. Like if you're just training a team and all that kind of stuff, a bad rep here or there. But I for some reason, the numbers are really, really important to me, that I'm actually getting ones that compare to research. Yeah, they also compare to research numbers. So I can like, one of the first books that I ever saw it in was like one of the Soviet manuals, Roman's Training of a Weightlifter. He has like the peak velocities of lifts at different heights. And those were not even close if you got an accelerometer, which is like, accelerometers in your phone. They were doing that
at the time. The way they would measure that was actually by picture frames. Like they weren't even using. They literally were taking pictures and trying to do math
and figuring out how far they moved them, or put them in front of like a checkerboard and tell you.
Yeah.
But there was a Gym Aware, $2,200 just for the unit, and like more, and then Tendo was $1,500 or something like that, and then recently a company called Rep One came out with like an LPT unit that was like $400, right? And so you could go. I bought 3
linear position transducer.
Yeah, which is basically just a tether attached to the bar, right? And they're the most accurate of all the things, right? There's also camera-based systems, right? They're the most accurate because they're actually measuring something, right? Like that, there's a spindle in there, and they have a laser or whatever, or an optical eye that can measure the rotations of that over time, right? And so
lifts,
the distance over time gives you velocity, right? Yeah. So it actually is measuring something physical, so it gives you more accurate numbers. So they came out with $400. So I just bought 3 of them, and I just like I gave them to my athletes. They came, during quarantine, and I gave them to all my athletes, and or some that had home gyms, and said, hey, you're going to train like this. And it's been really good, but they were all of a certain level, and the tech isn't so expensive that I think that it would be like, it would break your bank to like buy one, because if you're like a small gym owner, buying a $2,000 thing,
done, dude.
Right?
That's a month rent.
Yeah, that's rent. That's like 10 clients or something, right? So that's a big deal. That better change everything you do for the better for $2,000. But at $400, I was like, you can kind of more experiment with it. Yeah. So anyways, that's kind of like, I don't know how we ended up in that realm, but I think that the technology is getting cheaper, right? So I think it's more applicable to start thinking about it a little bit, right? And it's not going to be a terrible decision for every single for a gym owner to buy it right now, right? Or coming up, right?
Right. I would say one challenge from me to you would be, I actually think you should use the tendo unit or whatever it is. No, you were using, what is
The
it?
LPT. Yeah, rep 1.
Yeah, the rep 1 LPT. I actually think you should use that for pulls, mainly because I think you could find a position and a speed on your strength pull, snatch pull or clean pull, that would carry over as closely as it can get to your actual competitive movement. I think that would be an interesting sort of study to put together. It's like, all right, what if we move this as close as we can get, at 100% or 105% or whatever it might be, to our actual competitive movement, so that when we're doing this pulls, like, we're going to do 5 or 6 sets, and then if it gets down below a certain speed, then we either decrease weight or we stop the exercise.
For the reasoning of just like getting stronger specifically in the positions, right?
Yeah, and for the tempo.
Yeah. The interesting thing about pulls, and maybe you might be smart enough to like figure this out, is if you terminate the movement, right? Because on a pull you actually stop it, right?
Yeah.
You don't let it keep going, because your peak velocity is like just past like the finish, right?
Yeah.
The bar finally hits its peak velocity. So you almost have to do like a hand release pull. You have to pull it and let go of it.
Right.
And so that just becomes really to match speeds, right? But
this is what I would do. I would go snatch pull, maybe a slow eccentric to try and see what that slow eccentric does.
Yeah.
And then the second one might be a little better, but you don't let go. And then the third one, the third one might be the one that you're actually measuring. Is what we do is we go pull, and I hopefully I'll cut in a video of Jake doing this where he pulls and he holds and then lets go and like almost like falls back a little.
Yes. Okay, I've seen you do that.
So like that could be the rep that you'd have to measure that, and it might not even be worth your time, but it would be interesting,
Yes.
Well, I think my thing too is that they just released a study in like March about velocity-based training, and the whole I've got to look and see. I have it on my phone saved. The whole purpose or the whole result was basically like, all right, if you want to be dynamic and fast, you've got to move within this range. If you want to be strong, it doesn't matter as much because you can still gain strength at a lower speed. And if you want to gain size, it doesn't really matter at all. And it's like, no shit, dude. Like, who spends the money to do that study? Like, I could have told you that without ever doing the study. And I think that's where I'm just like, other people, like, I got to give this to you, is that I'm learning stuff. Dude, I read about this shit a lot, and I'm learning shit reading your Instagram posts. And I know that sounds absurd. Yeah, but I'm sitting there like, oh, yeah, I didn't think about that, And I think that's why I was glad that you did the rebuttal, because it was educational. I still think you're wrong, but there's other stuff going on, and there's a giant lack of information and more like pushiness in other realms, instead of like, hey, this is just another aspect. And it's funny because we used what we call time sets, where we'll say, hey, especially with my throwers, we do it quite a bit on the bench and on the squat, where we'll say, we're going to ramp up to a heavy triple. Sam triples 250, and then we say, okay, we're going to go down to 220, and you got to squat 220 for a triple in 4.5 to 5 seconds.
Yeah.
We're using rapid eccentrics. But so what's funny is, like, I'm sort of the naysayer, mainly because I'm timing, and I that's how I can gauge. Yeah. I can gauge off my clock, like, okay, the last 2 weeks, when he hit these sets, we do it typically when we do it for our throwers peaking, we'll do it for about 4 to 5 weeks, so I can see, all right, now he's starting to freshen up. Now he's starting to feel better. Now he's moving that 220 at 4 seconds instead of 4.7. And I know there's still going to be an error with my.
And I think that was something before I got like my they were coming out with cheaper stuff. I had my Tendo, and I would say, all right, if I'm trying to hit a triple above, let's say 0.5, 0.6 meters per second, Now we're talking like accelerative strength, which is moving pretty fast, right? Yeah. Like Louis Simmons always talks dynamic effort, right? Or dynamic method, and that's like 0.75 meters per second to 1.0. And so, we're trying to move fast, but if you're moving a bar 1.0, it's probably flying off your back at the top, right?
Yeah.
So anyways, I was trying to I didn't have a bunch of units. So it's like, all right, I want to move it about this speed. How fast do I need to do that triple? So I was doing the same thing, like get it under 5 seconds. How fast can we do this? How fast can we do that? The one that was really comparable is you can tell the peak velocity of a bar basically by how high you pull it, right?
Yeah.
So on the Olympic lifts, right, if it hits forehead height or above, it's like 2.5 to 3.0 meters per second. If you hit like chin height, it's like 2.2. Start hitting like shoulder height, it's like 2.0 and below, right? So, belly button height, which is a really heavy ass clean, is like 1.4 to 1.5. Sternum's 1.7 maybe, right? So you could start like doing that with the Olympic lifts, which I found to be pretty cool because it's like, all right, I actually can gauge bar speed just by looking and seeing how high that kid pulls it.
Okay. This is what I'm going to challenge you to do.
Okay.
Another pull that we do is I'll put the weightlifters into coach's eye, and I'll see when they hit a snatch, where's the bar at when it's no longer gaining height.
Yeah.
Where's the bar stop? Okay, now I'm going to put them, and we put a squat rack on the side, and I band a PVC pipe.
Yeah, well, like the old Kono pull, right?
Yeah, so we do a targeted pull.
Yeah.
Set up a targeted pull, and put the machine. You set up that target pull, and now I bet you to get to that targeted height, you're going to be close to max or just a little over. Yeah, to get there. So I think that would be a really good study for like 6 weeks. And then does that lead to? I know there's a lot of other variables that will lead to an increase in your maximum snatch or whatever, but it could be at least a slight bit of an indicator for you to say like, oh, if we can get a targeted pull over 2 seconds or 2 meters per second, and it's at that height that we've already established, or your chest or whatever, then we know that there's potential to hit that in a comp.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I think that I will try that for you, and I'll make an Instagram post about it. And I'll probably take all the credit as if it was my idea.
That's perfectly fine. I think my other interest would be is what I'm trying to think, like if you could sit there and say and determine like, okay, some athletes, this is where I would be willing to really invest the money in this, because I have what I call the athlete reactive analysis. And if you're still watching this, you can download the athlete reactive analysis down below right now on our YouTube channel. You love that, Will. But what I like to do is I see, okay, Haley peaks like this. Dude, Haley likes to back off like 3 weeks out, and then she likes to actually gain volume leading into a comp. Sam will taper for like 2.5 weeks. Jake, it's like we'll taper a week out, and then that last week we're going to do a couple heavy lifts, and then 2 days out we're done. But it'd be interesting to utilize that, like based off of deloads. When does an athlete show their best velocity profile, or not velocity profile, but their best performance off of a deload? Is it 2 days after? Is it 4 days? Is it 7 days?
Yeah.
And I know there's a lot of other variables, and you would have to have a lot more control over the situation.
Yeah, the peaking is like, I think, one of the biggest ones, right? Could that give a really clear picture of how that peak is going, right, for an athlete? I did so I got those extra units, sent them out to a couple of my athletes who were training in the garage, and it was like, and first thing we did was we took like a velocity profile, found out where they would nearly 100%, right? And then I started backing the numbers up. So like week 1, we're going to train at about this speed. Week 2, we're going to train at about this speed. Week 3, I usually deload in week 3 anyway. So it's like week 3, we're actually going to bump the speed up, but do a crap ton of singles, right? Do 8 singles at, the fastest speed you've done all week. And then week 4 is going to be your heaviest week. I just want to see I was just like, hey, on the last day of the program, just max out snatch and clean and jerk. And, and then if you want to take like an extra day, let me see your squats. Let's see if like anything happened. And I promise you, these are two kids who were like, who been to like university nationals, going to be national level kids in a couple years, right? They, on every single lift, they PR'd by at least 4 kilos, right? Like snatch 4, girl, like a 58 or 59 kilo girl, 4 kilo snatch PR, guy 5 kilo snatch PR, 8 kilo clean jerk PR, 10 kilo snatch or squat PR. And now the interesting thing is the next week they said they felt just like total trash, right? Yeah. And so I kind of wondered, that week that I put them on before that was legitimately like how I should peak people now, right? Yeah. It was like 8 to 10 singles at like super fast stuff, like 10 to 12% faster than, like, so if they snatch 2.0 meters per second, we started around best snatch, they were supposed to snatch everything above 225 or something, right? They're going super fast. And they came in, they hit huge numbers that week. And I wonder, because they felt like such trash following week, if that would be how to actually peak.
I would say so. I mean, I think it's worth playing around.
Sounds like it, right?
Yeah. I think that definitely sounds like where it's like you're on to something.
Yeah.
I think that's like something. It's funny because I love like what you just were talking about. And I think that part of me is that I would struggle to establish like I have such a refined like system of training that I would struggle to figure out where to put this stuff into, I guess is what I'm saying. And now I'm sitting here like, man, I really.
Yeah, isn't that the thing, right? Like a new thing comes out and you're like, dang it.
Where am I?
Well, the thing, anytime you get there's a new thing, and if you go, that thing's worthwhile, it's like, dang it, I got to figure out what I got to like move out to put this in, and I like what I already do right now,
Right.
So I just think that it's like, I said this in my YouTube video, this is not going to unlock some magical new system of training that you've never seen before, right? It's going to, if you already have like a really good system of training, it's going to give you an extra piece of information that's going to be super valuable to that system of training, right?
Right.
But if you don't know what you're doing, right? If you get your programs by like reading, if you get your programs from like the internet, right? You see somebody like write this, you're like, this is a program, right? I'm going to do this. If you don't program already, you don't write your programs and put a bunch of thought into it, and have developed some sort of system, it's probably just going to be a piece of information that might add a layer of confusion.
Yeah.
To me, it's like a piece of information that's now added a little level of clarity, right?
I think that's 100% what it would do. Is that for most people would, dude, they're not utilizing like programming in the sense that like I could tell you exactly what's going to happen on day 1 of a specific athlete, day 2 of a specific athlete, and I could tell if we're 4 weeks, if we're 12 weeks, if we're 16 weeks, based off of what I've done with my periodization. And so I think that's where something like this could clutter the information, clutter the actual program design to a point. I think for me, yeah. I don't know. I'm now thinking I'm writing this down because I'm probably going to look up that rep 1 right now.
Well, here's the simple thing you could do, right? Is like, like I wrote this. There's like different. You can go all in what I was kind of describing. Like we're going to prescribe speeds for all this, but like, you could go get a profile on Jake and say Jake moves like this, right? We could even go further back than that, right? I track my muscle snatch every day, right? As like my readiness.
I was going to bring that up because it's like that would be a really good indicator for your session.
Yes, exactly. And I just use a muscle. You could do a vertical jump, right? People have done that and showed that scientifically valid, like track your vertical jump. It goes down, you're probably fatigued or something, right? It's up, it's probably a good day to train heavy. But I use my muscle snatch because it's like just so comparable to exactly what I'm going to do that day. And so it's like 3 to 3.1. That's a pretty good day. If it dips below 3 meters per second, like I probably ought to think about what I'm doing a little bit off quite a bit. But I like went out today just before we got on here, and I did a muscle snatch at 3.4 meters per second. And I was like, what's happening, right?
Yeah.
And to be quite honest, I didn't feel very good, right? Like I walked out there and I was like, I don't feel that great, but I hit that 3.4 and I was like, what? So I just like keep listening. Every number I'm hitting across the board is like super fast compared to, 90 kilos, 100 kilos, 110. And so I'm like, I'm going to send it at the end of this. So I did 15 singles on the minute and ended at 130 kilos, right? Yeah, which good. I haven't snatched 130 kilos in like 6 months,
right?
Let alone after 50 singles on the minute, So it's like, so it was, anyways, it is like the number one easiest thing you do is like track a movement and it'll give you an idea. You could buy one unit and almost set your whole gym up and say, hey, give me your muscle snatch at 50% of your max or whatever. Hit that. All right. Pretty good day. Maybe not, watch it. Or, then you can get a profile on people and like, just say, hey, stay above this today. That's it. Right. It really like they look at it, stay above this today. Or you can start actually programming and like I have started trying to wave the speeds, right? So it's like high speed and then drop them down and then, just regulate intensity throughout the week. So,
yeah.
No, anyways, I think there's a bunch of ways you can use it. And I think if you know it's a piece of information to in.
Yeah, that's the thing. I think it's definitely, it could be used so many different ways, but you've got to have a clear-cut method of how you're going to use it.
Yes. Yeah, I think absolutely, right? And well, if yeah.
We're all going to be waiting for your book to come out so that we can then start to play around with it. So you better step that up.
I know. How many words does a book need to be?
I think, dude, if it's 40,000 words, that's legit, dude. That's a
big.
Yeah, that's a big one. That's the real deal.
Yeah.
So
anyways, I'm working on it. My goal was to like get it done before the gym opens back up next week. It's not going to be all the way done, but yeah. I'll have most of my content and then it done probably by the end of next week, and then I'll send it out to my editor. And I'll have to like take some pictures.
Yeah. So all right. Well, tell everybody where they can find you, where your what your website is, and any information.
Yeah. So I'm most active on Instagram. Actually, I'm only active on Instagram. So it's at Wil Fleming, and then I'll post and Will is with one L because my real name's Wilson. And so at Wil Fleming on Instagram, and I'll post, my YouTube links. My website's wilfleming.com. But yeah, go follow me on Instagram. That would be the number one place. And then you'll see everything from my YouTube channel to my website there periodically.
Yeah. And I think I will say that as much trash as I have spoken about velocity-based training, I think Will's doing a really good job currently during the coronavirus pandemic with like weightless training essentially that you're posting, and I think that's I think that's fantastic. And then I also just think you're doing a really good job with educating people who are interested in it. It's not just look at me, I'm strong, you suck. It's like, hey, this is what I'm doing and this is how it's working and this is what the information is. I think you're putting out the type of content that's very, very valuable to a lot of people.
Well, appreciate it. Thanks, dude.
Yeah.
We're all just trying to get on your level.
Shut the fuck up. All right, everybody. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks for tuning into Dane's platform, and we will see each other on another Dane's platform. That was a horrible outro. Peace.